I
I've
think
never liked
Ranbir
him.
Kapoor acted, I think, better than Sanjay Dutt in his own life, in his own biopic.
That's true. Again, a film I'm not particularly fond of.
Welcome to Being Curious with Yash.
Hi everyone, welcome to Being Curious with Yash. Today's episode is with Varun. Varun is a film critic and a podcaster. He is a very intelligent mind. I hope you all guys can learn from him as much as I did. We disagreed a lot in this video, I must say. Apologies, the video quality is not that great.
Let's start, bro. So,
Yeah.
I want to know about your childhood, bro, because like a lot of people see movies, but a lot of I don't know, very few people, want to become a film critic or write so much about your movies. And
Yeah.
like while researching about you, I just read about your blog.
Yeah.
And I read a lot of posts from your blog, and I was like really fascinated. I'm like, this guy writes such good reviews. I don't know why he's
Oh,
not on YouTube, famous and all.
thank you.
So I don't know. Just tell me about like how did films came about in your life?
I
And
mean, I
just
grew
about
up
it.
in the normal way, like movies were a once in a way thing. My parents are casual movie watchers. Nobody's serious about it in terms of we've got to watch a film a week kind of thing in at home. But we used to have this thing because I grew up in small town India where you didn't have a lot of theaters. uh,
Okay.
we used to have an auditorium. My father was in the army, so we
Okay.
either went to the auditorium or we used to buy VCDs during our summer vacations, and every Sunday we'd put on a film. So usually growing
Okay.
up, because it was something we were very fond of. It used to be one of the Harry Potter movies or like something like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. But
Oh,
I think I grew into being a bit of a film buff by the time I was 13 or 14, and I
nice.
started seeking out films which were either really old or like a lot of people that I knew at least hadn't heard of them. And writing sort of happened organically because I used to. I am a writer in general. I've been writing since I was about 8.5, 9 years old. So I think I used to write about films that I'd watched on my Facebook uh, profile. This was when Facebook was still active, say mid 2010s, 2014 or so. And then one day I think I just decided that okay, let's give WordPress a shot because it's a
Hmm.
consolidated platform to write on. And this
Yeah.
must have been around, yeah, this was around October of 2015. I've been writing about cinema since then. Like I used to, in
Hmm.
when I lived in Pune, which was where I lived at the time, I used to go to the theater every week. Also
Hmm.
because this was before the almost monopolistic control that PVR enjoys today. So
Yeah.
theaters used to have, even you could go to a good multiplex and not shell out more than 150 rupees for a film. So
Yeah.
that's kind
Now
of
it is
dead
like
now.
now it is upping up to 1,000 rupees. Like
Easily,
if you
yes.
have just have a popcorn, like 400-500, it's for a ticket.
Yeah, that's why
And
I never eat at a
there is,
theater.
yeah, yeah, and like in Hindi movies, films can be shitty most of the time.
I mean
Yeah,
that's debatable, but yeah,
yeah,
most films aren't very good films in general. It's not
yeah.
Hindi English. I've realized this quite early that films in general turn out to be not as good as you expect them to be.
Hmm.
That's been my experience at least. But yeah, that's pretty much how I started. So I've been writing consistently on the blog for about 8 years now.
Hmm. Nice, bro. I read your blogs, and like I learned a lot about films from your blogs. Like
Oh, thank you so
from
much.
researching like a week, so I'm researching about you from a week, and like quite fascinating. So I just want to know like what do you prefer, like OTT or like you just like to go to the cinema and just
I love going to the theater. I don't think there's, and it's not about the theatrical experience of being watching a film with people. I don't. I usually go to the theater alone. I've been doing that for the longest time. If
hmm,
you go in a group, I don't think first of all going to a film in a group is a useful activity because you're not exactly going to sit and chat with one another in a film. You're supposed to be
yeah,
watching the film.
yeah, I
So,
yeah, true. Like because like I'll tell you. I'm sorry, I'm
yeah, not a
interrupting.
problem.
Like a lot of my friends, they go to movies with someone. They want someone
Yeah.
to go with the movies. I'm
I
like,
think that's just the peer, the
yeah,
societal thing of
Yeah.
don't go out in general alone. So you will find very few people going out to restaurants alone. You'll find very few people going to theaters
Yeah.
alone.
So
It's,
yeah, so true. I'm like,
it's
but a good movie deserves my like full focus, full attention. Why?
absolutely
Like,
yes.
I can talk to you anytime I want. Like,
Yeah,
why I would like j- doesn't make sense to me
it
most of the
doesn't.
time.
It doesn't because it's not
Yeah.
like a meal. It's not. It's not something that where an interaction with another person is of any great value. So I
Yeah.
enjoy going to the theater, and I'll
Hmm.
watch any kind of film in the theater. I think I recently watched a film called 12th Fail by Vinod Chopra on a big screen, and I think while a lot of people today would say, "Oh, it's a film that can be watched on a streaming platform," I quite
Ah.
enjoyed watching it on a big screen. I think every film that's made merits an interaction with an audience member on a big screen. I'm not. I like the stuff that's on streaming platforms, but because there's so much of it, it's like a deluge. So you've got to pick and choose what you want to watch very carefully. And I at least am very prudent in what I want to watch on a streaming platform. Just because there's a new show out doesn't mean I'm likely to sort of go and look it up.
Yeah. That I think that's very wise of you. Like I see like a lot of people, if new web series come, especially in college, like we
Hmm.
have to watch it. I'm like,
Right.
bro, read some reviews. Like earlier, like 4 5 years back, I did not used to, read reviews and all. But
Right.
now I seem to have a little affection towards reviews because most of the reviewers, like, they have little knack of what the film is trying to say. So if you can,
Right.
little bit connect with the review, then you should just give it a shot. But most of the
I,
time,
I don't know whether that's true because see, I at least even before I started writing about films in any way or form, I never read a review while going to a film
hmm,
or before going to a film or before watching a show. So I
hmm,
don't know whether people should wait because it's entirely about how you respond to something. It's almost instinctive,
ah,
which is how I respond
ah,
to a theatrical film as well. And I try not to read anything.
hmm,
uh, I earlier used to watch pretty much every interview about a film before I went to watch it. Now I've cut down on that drastically because I'd rather not have the experience ruined in any way. So I'd much rather just go
okay.
and watch the film rather than know beforehand what the director's intention was or what the actor's intention was, because then you're judging the intent as opposed to what's on screen. So I think it's fine for those who really want to keep up with every new release. And there was a time I did that for the blog as well. I used to write it on the blog once every week, at, at least once every week, I think. But over time, I suppose because of the lockdown and everything, that habit faded, and I'm only now going to write about something if I feel like writing about it. Like now it's been a month since I put up a review, but I don't find that to be a very troubling problem because I write for myself. So whether or not there's an issue in terms of traffic on the blog is not really something that bothers me.
Nice, nice. So actually, I think it must have helped you, like, because like most of the people, like I don't know,
Yeah.
everyone that writes reviews writes for people, like writes for
Yeah.
an audience. So
Hmm.
like, and you must be having like reviewers as your friend. So how does this experience differ, like when you are
Hmm.
writing for an audience and writing for yourself? Like, I think there
Okay.
must be some difference.
I'm sure there is, but like because I've never had that the former interaction of writing for a certain group of people, I'll never know what it's like. I've always been pretty selfish in terms of how I've written. I will
But
only ever write if I want to write about something, and that
uh,
has to be driven by some sense of uh, a response that you have towards a film, whether it's a negative response, it's a positive response, whatever it is. And I do have acquaintances and friends who write about cinema, but quite a few of them are paid to do so. Like I don't earn any money from my blog. It's not
hmm,
monetized because I don't want to turn something I'm passionate about into a job, essentially, in that sense. I'd much rather be employed by someone to write a review, but I wouldn't want to turn the blog into a sort of monetizable function. So
Hmm.
I really can't comment as to what it is to write for people, because then again, I don't think any reviewer writes for an audience. They write for a readership that wants to read them, sure, but that
Hmm.
readership quite often disagrees with you. Like some of the critics I read, quite often I disagree with vehemently on their opinions. But I am reading them more for the writing and for what they may have caught in a film and I may have missed, and just how they interpret cinema on some occasions.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
That's a that's a very valid point, I would say. So, I just had this curiosity question. So,
yeah.
like when you write about films,
Hmm.
okay, so does this change your perception of how you view films? Like I never write about films. So,
Okay.
I go with the free mind. See, whatever
Right.
comes my way. Okay.
Yeah.
So if it's bad, then it's bad. And then I just move on.
Right.
But when you write about films,
Hmm.
so you have to view it with certain degree of, I would say, analytical angle.
Okay.
So does this analytics sometimes hinder your viewing experience? I'm just curious.
No, because I tend to not analyze a film really. I tend to just observe what's happening. If I notice something interesting, and I usually carry a small notepad of some kind and a pen, because I
Uh,
don't write on my phone. And it's disruptive to other people in the audience if I'm taking out my phone and typing away while the film is still going on. So I
okay.
note down observations or connections that I make while I'm watching the film. But
Hmm.
otherwise, I think I watch it pretty much like every other member of the audience. Probably my taste varies, but that could be said about even a person who doesn't watch films to write about them. That taste varies.
Hmm. Okay, that's a nice, because I was listening to some interviews and they say that when you watch films for a living,
Yeah.
it certainly changes your perception. That's why I wanted to ask someone who
I
writes
think
about
that
films
could
on
be
first
that
hand.
could be said about someone who writes maybe 100 pieces a year,
Uh,
right? Somebody who's doing that on such a regular basis. Whereas I think I tend to curtail myself to maybe 15 or 20. In a good year, I'll write maybe 15 or 20 pieces. In a bad year, it can come down to three or four, and that has
okay,
happened on occasion. So
okay.
unless I'm writing with that regularity, it's not
Hmm.
going to be that I produce a, a ream of writing really.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I would just want to ask, like, who are your favorite like film reviewers in
Okay.
India, abroad? Who do you like to read?
So I tend to not read a lot of overseas critics. It's a bad habit. I want to sort of get into reading some of them, but I think Peter Bradshaw and Mike McCahill, who are both English, they write pretty well, and I like to read what they've written about a film usually. In India, I think pretty much everyone reads Bharadwaj Rangan.
Yeah.
Um, he's a very fascinating critic because he finds things in films that you didn't notice perhaps,
Hmm.
and he's a champion of films that are flawed, which I find very endearing even if I don't always agree with him on.
Hmm.
And I think that's very important, to disagree with the critics you read, because otherwise if you're just going to, अगर आप उनकी हाँ में हाँ मिलाने वाले हो, then there's no opinion going around. It's like an echo chamber. So he's
Yeah.
fascinating to read. I think
Yeah.
Rahul Desai, Uday Bhatia are terrific
Hmm.
writers, both of them. Jay
Hmm.
Arjun Singh also writes really, really well.
Yeah.
And
I want to plug in. I want to plug in something. I matlab, I listened to the podcast. The seen and the unseen, in which
yeah,
from which and Jay Arjun Singh was a guest,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
what a good episode that was.
That
Shout
was
out to
lovely.
Amit Varma.
Yes,
I think he
yeah,
is my inspiration for doing podcasting. But what a good episode was it was, and
that was
I
really good.
really, yeah, yeah. So
And I
yeah,
think aside from them, Nandini Ramnath is pretty good. I
okay.
Again, she finds very fascinating things in films. Udita Junjunwala also writes pretty well. Raja Sen used to be really fun to read, but he's not writing that often anymore. But
Okay.
there's some really good writing going around in India that's really worth reading in cinema.
Okay. Oh, that's nice.
And more than just criticism, I think, for instance, someone like Uday Bhatia, who writes for Mint Lounge,
Hmm.
he has written this lovely book on Satya and the Hindi gangster film. It's called Bullets
Okay.
Over Bombay, and it's a really fascinating book to read. And his long form
Okay.
pieces are actually on occasion more interesting than his reviews, because he can really
Okay.
dive deep into various things. He's written on censorship, he's written on misrepresentation of history. He's done
Hmm.
quite a bit of great film related writing in that sense. So yeah, there's a whole world of film based writing out there that's yet to sort of be tapped into.
Okay, nice. So, like a little bit moving on from the film review part. Now we
Yeah.
talk about the films. So, I want to ask like about films. What
Hmm.
certain kind of films that you have over the years started to have a little bit more affection, or like, do you like the Hindi masala cinema? Because I don't know. I see like a lot of reviewers, not some reviewers, a lot of people generally, hating these
Hmm.
kind of Pathan and Jawan and Animal.
Hmm.
Animal is a different kind of beast altogether, I would say.
Yeah.
But there is certain kind of, very, I would say, a policing kind of mindset that is going on. So, your thoughts about that?
I don't know whether I agree with the policing mindset in the sense that I think people should be receptive to all kinds of cinema. I'm not saying everyone's got to like everything that comes out, but uh, I think every sort of cinema has the right to exist. On that being said, Jawan, for instance, is not really a masala film. It's been termed by it's been termed by audiences to be a mass film, in that it's completely in service of its protagonist and in service of Shah Rukh Khan. And
Yeah,
in all fairness, Hindi cinema has stopped doing masala films well. So masala films go back all the way to 1973, when a film called Yadon Ki Barat was made by Nasir Hussain. And
yeah,
so in about 50 years, I think, especially in the last 10, 10, 15 years, we've had a real come down in terms of the quality of masala films that are being made. I think the last truly enjoyable masala film I watched was a film called Mukkabaz by Anurag Kashyap in 2018.
Hmm. So,
So that's
I
already
would I
about
would
six
want
odd
to
years ago.
know. Yeah, I would want to know, like, what is the difference? First, I want to know what is the
Right.
difference between a masala film and a mass
Yeah.
film. I
Okay,
thought they
so
both were similar. I'm
no, they're not the same. So
pretty
Bharatwaj
dumb
Rangan
question,
has
but yeah,
done like a great
yeah,
long form piece on this. But I think
yeah.
essentially the difference is that masala is truly masala, in that it's a mishmash of romance, action, drama, comedy, adventure almost. So something like, say, Sholay is a masala film. Whereas a
Yeah.
mass film is a film that is geared towards the persona of an actor and a star, and it's not really about the story. It's completely in service of an actor or a star, which is
Okay.
what Jawan is. It's completely in service of Shah Rukh Khan's characters, both of them in the film.
Hmm.
So, and there's a stylistic element to it as well. So
Hmm.
I'm not a big fan of mass films. I don't like them because I'm not a big fan of actors per se. I have almost some level of contempt for the idea of a fan in today's day and age. Um, so I am a big fan of masala films. In fact, another good masala film that came out some years ago was a film called Agnipath, which was remade from the 1990 film by Mukul
Yeah.
Anand. So I
Yeah.
like the original; it's quite fun. But I
Hmm.
also like the remake quite a bit because they refashioned many elements of the original and changed a lot of stuff, introduced a whole new character, removed a very irritating Mithun Chakrabarti character which was there in the source
Yeah.
material.
Yeah.
So,
I really
but
like. I'm sorry to interrupt. I really like the Sanjay Dutt character.
I like the
I
Sanjay Dutt
thought
character.
I
It's one of
had
the rare occasions he acted well. He's otherwise a terrible actor.
okay.
Yeah, that's my opinion
And
at
I
least.
think
I've never liked
Ranbir
him.
Kapoor acted, I think, better than Sanjay Dutt in his own life, in his own biopic.
That's true. Again, a film I'm not particularly fond of.
Yeah.
That's sort of, yeah, that rose tinted view of a man who's been convicted of certain offenses is a
Yeah.
bit troublesome for me as a person to
Yeah.
watch.
Okay. Okay. Oh, that's really nice to know the difference between a masala film and okay.
No, I'm just picking up from what Rangan wrote. I That's none
No,
of that
no.
is my
I think
contribution.
I think he's a definitive authority on these kind
Absolutely,
of
he is.
movies. Yeah. So, like, what kind of movies have you been watching lately? Or like, I would want to know, like, what are your favorite films in the recent years? Not from like all time, just recent years, 3 4 years after COVID.
Okay.
I think a lot of movies actually tanked in the box office. So I want to
Yeah.
know.
I mean, the box office is a fairly dodgy yardstick by which to judge films for the simple reason that you never know why they fail.
Yeah.
And the whole idea that people are going to watch a film and thus it is a good film is kind of reductive of the idea, because cinema is still on some level an art form. So I think some of the
Mm.
films I liked in the immediate sort of post COVID setting, that would probably be 2022 onwards. There was an Anirudh Iyer film called An Action Hero with Jaideep Ahlawat and Ayushmann Khurrana, which I really, really enjoyed. I thought that
Yeah.
was a tremendous film. I
Yeah.
quite liked Top Gun Maverick as well. I'm not a big fan of the first film, but I enjoyed Maverick. More recently, I think I had the opportunity to attend the Mumbai Film Festival. So I watched a film called Kayo Kayo Kalo, which is a Gujarati film. I hope
Okay.
it gets a wider release at some point, maybe this year. I thought it was a beautiful film. There was another film by a Finnish filmmaker, I think Aki Kaurismäki. It was called Fallen Leaves. That was
Okay.
wonderful.
Okay.
Sardar Udham, but that was still during COVID. So,
Mm.
but it was again the sort of film we don't get very often in Hindi cinema.
Mm. Mm.
So we've had a fair bunch of very really good films. It's just that people make up their minds as to whether or not they want to watch certain stuff, and
Mm.
I don't. Again, nobody's to blame for a film not working commercially, because ultimately, is it a good film should be the yardstick by which to judge it. I mean, if you pick up like the last year, um, before COVID hit, which is 2019, I don't even
Mm.
remember what the highest grossing film was, but I do remember the films I actually ended up caring for, and I can actually recall them quite well.
Mm. Yeah, but matlab, I think for films,
Hmm.
I think that there is a very huge incentive to actually, produce this mass film or masala film, that actually
Absolutely.
succeeds. So if that succeeds, it waters every kind of plant that's there.
Sure, it
Like
does.
if they
I'm
make
not denying that
700 crore
problem.
rupees, yeah,
But
yeah,
I'm saying those films still need to be well made. There still needs to be a script. There still needs to be good acting.
yeah, yeah.
The craft
That's
cannot
really a
be,
good point.
yeah,
Huh.
the craft cannot be sacrificed at the altar of, oh, it will make money and thus poor filmmaking is fine. So
Yes,
pretty much
definitely.
anything Salman Khan has done in the last few years has been badly made. It doesn't matter
Yes.
if it's making money and, to use your
Hmm.
analogy, watering all sorts of plants. That makes no difference whatsoever. Because
Yeah,
if the film
I
is bad,
think
nobody's going to remember it.
I think he's watering all kind of stars that roam around the a circle of Andheri and Lokanwala, uh, and like matlab, he's like I don't know. Sometimes before like watching his movies, I used to actually like watching his movies, this Dabang and all. But
Hmm.
after a point of time, the story and the coherence starts to fade away. Like I
Yeah.
don't know what is going on, and actually what you told Abhi, I just learned it now became like a masala film. Sorry, I don't know.
It was
A
more,
film that
it
is
was
in
not even a
service
mass
to
film.
Salman.
It's in service. Yeah. So
Yeah,
it was a
yeah, in
mass film
service to only.
essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
And I
again,
think
not well made. So it
yeah,
doesn't matter ultimately.
yeah, and I think Shah Rukh Khan does a very nice job of this, of
Hmm.
maintaining that balance. He
Hmm.
did a Jawan and Pathan, and then he did a Donkey. So
Hmm.
he kind of maintains that balance. Do you like
But
agree with this?
No, I'll tell you why. Because I think Donkey was a bad film. I
Okay.
didn't I didn't have much patience with it. I didn't
Okay.
have much patience with Jawan either. I actually ended up quite liking Pathan simply because it was a film that was aware of its own limitations as well.
Hmm.
And I would much rather people were self-aware when they made films. So Jawan picking at the whole electronic voting machines angle and trying to make it and turn it into a social message, and Donkey, which I think Donkey was a far more problematic film for the simple reason that it confuses illegal immigration and the refugee crisis. They're two very separate things. And the the logic that Donkey went for was particularly baffling because if you can't speak a particular language, exactly how do you hope to survive in a foreign country? So
Yeah.
to pick
Yeah.
that as the flaw in the system is kind of ridiculous because how exactly is this person supposed to survive in that country? And I
Yeah.
also thought, I mean, generally it was a pretty bland movie. He didn't Shahrukh didn't act particularly well in it, and the craft. I'm not a very big Rajkumar Hirani fan anyway, so the craft
Hmm.
was also not particularly memorable. The writing was all over the place. So, but
Hmm.
I would say that on some level, the star will have to recede at some point, and the
Hmm.
actor has to take precedence over that because it's ultimately about wanting to watch a good story. Because
Yeah.
right now,
So
while these mass films are getting a lot of public
yeah.
appreciation, there will come a time when people will be tired of them.
Yeah.
Like we made sports movie after sports movie after sports movie until we essentially killed the genre off. Now, how
Yeah.
many
So
people are
true.
making a sports movie? So
Yeah.
it's like that,
Yeah.
right? I mean, there's going to come a time the whole Akshay Kumar being a Deshbhakt angle will have to stop working because
Yeah.
it's just no longer fun to watch those films. It
Yeah.
was okay
Yeah.
when he did
Because
it.
yeah. Yeah. It's not very well made. Like there
It's
is a
not very well
story,
made.
but yeah, there's no story. There's a story, but Akshay Kumar, just doesn't put any effort.
Effort into his role. Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
completely effortless actor in that he puts in no
Yeah.
effort.
Yeah. Nawazuddin Siddiqui can also say I'm an effortless actor in a
Yeah.
different sense. Yeah. So, moving on.
Varun, I wanted to know what books and videos would you like to recommend to our audience?
Two books I'd recommend. One I think I already mentioned. It's called Bullets Over Bombay by Uday Bhatia. I'm recommending both books on cinema. And the other is a book called Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli by Mark Seal, which is a book about the making of The Godfather. That's Francis Ford Coppola's film. Both extremely fascinating books filled with sort of insight into the making of films and of really landmark films, both The Godfather and Ram Gopal Verma's Satya. As to films, two films that I really, really recommend and that I've watched only recently in the last 4 or 5 years. One would be Billy Wilder's The Apartment, which is a terrific use of the ingredients of a rom com, but really a very, very strong film. And the Abhishek Chaubey neo Western film Sonchiria, which is about rebels or dacoits in the Chambal region in the mid 70s. Yeah, those two books and two films I'd really recommend to everyone.
It was pleasure meeting you. Hope to see you again soon. Bye bye. Take care.